He delivered part of your will part of his will for your life before you were even thought of. Before you were even birthed into this world, he had already began to plan his will for your life. It says, so God created man in his own image. Of God he created him male and female. He created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. So now God delivers the second part of his will. He says, this is what I want you to do now. I want you to be fruitful, and I want you to multiply. And as God begins to give out his will, he begins to let them know exactly his will. I've given you these trees for food. I've given you these things for these herbs for meat. Let's read it. And God said, see, I've given you every herb that yields seed, which is on the face of all the earth, and every seed, to you it shall be for food. Also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there is life, I have given every green herb for food, and it was so. Then God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. So the evening and the morning were the sixth day. He says, then he created man, and he delivered unto him his will. This is what I want you to do. I want you to subdue the earth. I want you to begin to act like me. I want you to begin to talk like me. I don't want you to begin to think anything else but my thoughts that I have for you. I'm giving you the trees to eat. And in my will, the only thing that I will you not to do is eat of the tree of good and evil. I don't want you to eat of that tree. And don't break my will for you. As long as you stay in my will and don't move left or right, I'm going to give you good life. I'm going to give you peace in your life. If there is any kind of troubled water, I'm going to strengthen you enough that you may be able to subdue it. In every aspect, according to my will, I've got your back. And we have this misconception that says, you know what? But if I don't like his will for my life, I can choose whatever I want to. I'm here to tell you this morning, you are wrong. Adam and Eve was created for God, by God, through God. The only will that was for their life was God. And the moment, let's go to Genesis. Let's go to chapter 3, verse 1. Let's go to chapter 3, verse 1. I want you to see what happens when I'm going to show you a couple of versions of what happens when you think you have free will. The children of God, the children that belong to God, the ones that he has etched in the palm of his hand, the one that nobody can snatch him out, them don't got free will. The only will they have is the will of the Father. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God said, ye shall not eat it, nor shall ye touch it, lest ye die. Then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die. For God knows that in that day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eye, and the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took of this fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. This is a point to where they believe that Eve began to believe everything that the enemy spit into her ear. He began to say, you don't have to listen to God. God doesn't want you to be like him. He doesn't want you to have a will of your own. He doesn't want you to have free will. He doesn't want you to make your own decisions. So what I'm spitting in your ear right now is to let you know that you have free will and you can eat of this fruit. And if you really want, she said, okay, listen, if I got free will, it does look good. It smells good. I do want to be wise. So I'm going to go ahead and take of the fruit. I'm going to go ahead and break God's commandment. I'm going to go ahead and break the covenant between me and God, because the glue that holds the covenant between me and God is me submitting myself unto his will. And the moment that I don't submit myself unto his will, then I become like Eve. I become like the person that is now subdued by the enemy, subdued in my heart, alienated from the word, alienated from my God, alienated from the presence of my Father. I have now been thrown out of the garden that he has already prepared for me, because in his will everything is already done for me, and outside of his will I have to fight and begin to battle every single situation. The battle outside of the will of God is my battle to fight, and sometimes I can't fight these battles, but inside the will of God, when I don't have a misconception that I have my own free will, when I know that I've been chosen and I've been delivered and I've been bought with a price, and I stay in the will of God, all of a sudden the things that I go through, he gives me enough strength to subdue them. He gives me enough strength to walk over them. He gives me enough strength to be the king that he called me to be. But outside of his, there is danger. You believe that once you chose Yahweh, that you can jump off the boat anytime that you see fit. If his will doesn't fit your idea, if his will doesn't fit your liking, then all of a sudden you decide that you're going to go against his will and commit unto. Let me explain something to you. As Paul said, you have to understand, once you've been chosen by God, there is no turnaround. Paul said, listen, if they do not come back, if they do not repent, if they do not come back and clean themselves up, turn them over to Satan for the destruction of their body, so God can save the soul. Because once God chose you, that soul belongs to him, and once it's in him, he can't be a God that lies, and he can't be a weak God, so he has to save the soul. And if you don't let your flesh turn back to him, if you don't understand that there's dangers in that misconception of free will, if you don't, he said, I will destroy the body so I can save the soul. This is my will and my will only. There is no will, there is none of your will in this. I chose you. I picked you. You gave yourself to me. You signed a contract with my son in blood. I etched you in the palm of my hand. I tattooed you there. And nobody can snatch you out. Not even your own silly self. And if you try to get outside of my will, let me explain. Let's go to Jonah chapter 1. Let me see what happens when you think that you have free will, once you've been chosen and picked and you signed that contract with Yahweh. Let's see what happens when you decide that you have free will.
Hallelujah.
Come on, let's go.
Hallelujah.
Go with me. Jonah chapter 1. Let's go to Jonah chapter 1. Let's start at verse 1. Let's see what happens. He says, now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai. Now the word came to him. The will of God came to him. I began to speak to him and let him know exactly what he wanted him to do. This is the will of God. And arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He says, listen, he wants me to go down to Nineveh, and he wants me to preach the gospel, preach some salvation to them. I'm not going to do it. I don't care what his will for my life is. I'm going to choose my own will. But you have to understand that Jonah was a prophet. He was a man called, ordained by God. God had already owned Jonah. But when Jonah believed that